I'm here, and you see Kathleen Baker is here as well. So I believe we can move forward. The next item is the public comment.
Yes, and I don't see anybody from the public to give public comment.
Okay. All right. So in terms of the definition of public assistance, Kathleen, this was given to both you and I, and the reason behind that is at the last meeting, Kim had mentioned that the agenda item was on there at your request. I had mentioned that this was one I was passionate about as well, because we are receiving quite a few rejections from our family court judges because some of our parties are on, the non-referable aid codes like food stamps and medical. And so we've been having some issues with the 425.110, the stipulation component. So in speaking with the committee members, I expressed that concern. Kathy Kaplan was at the last Child Support Guideline Committee as well. She was on board on behalf of the state in redefining public assistance being, oh, there's Kathleen, there's Kathy now. Hi, Kathy.
Good morning.
We are just getting started. I was just sharing with Kathleen that the state is on board as well with redefining public assistance to just be the referable aid, which would be the TANF cash. If that's something, Kathleen, you're amenable to, and for just in kind of brainstorming this, for today's agenda, I did include the NRS definition of public assistance. And so in kind of navigating how we present this at the next Guideline Commission meeting, I didn't want to define public assistance again, because I think it would confuse the public to say, for purposes of the NAC, public assistance is defined as this, but in the NRS, public assistance is defined with all of these different criteria. So my thought, and I'm open to ideas, Kathleen, and Kathy, my thought is in the areas that public assistance is noted in the NAC, which is 425.110 and 425.150, just changing the public assistance word to TANF assistance for needy families to keep it clean.
I certainly think that would be appropriate for the stipulation for 425.110. And that's kind of what we've been looking at when we've been doing our stipulations. I had it brought up, actually not by my court master, but by a judge who was covering, because I was looking at TANF versus Medicaid. And I said, well, we've been using it as TANF. I didn't get any blowback from that particular district court judge on it. I'm wondering, though, one of the things I was thinking about in terms of the adjustment factor, because we're looking at right-sized orders, and again, I have a court master who often uses the adjustments to help come up with that right-sized order. And I'm wondering whether or not we should expand it to include more than TANF. I mean, I know that under the federal programs, SSI, housing assistance are included. I don't know whether those are factors that we should allow to be considered or whether we should make it more limited to just TANF. And I'm open to that discussion. I just like to have enough leeway that if this is an adjustment factor, it actually can be used to benefit the parties in terms of making that order.
Okay, so you're talking about 425.150, yes. Subsection, 1D.
Yes.
And so does your court use petitioner or child's receipt of other types of public assistance to lower respondent's obligation?
It sometimes yes, and sometimes no. It's sort of so my court looks at the adjustment factors as discretionary, and I believe uses them to look at the overall basis or the overall amount of the ongoing child support, and then we'll make an appropriate adjustment depending on the party's, income and they don't always use relative income. Rarely do they use the SSI, and they never, of course, use SSD. But I have not seen it used a lot. I think it's more TANF as well. I don't see them using the Medicaid as an issue. I do wonder, though, for the UIFSA cases, we tend to deal with a lower income group. But for those people where there's an obligor who has a much higher income, and you have an obligee with a lower income who is getting Medicaid, who is getting SNAP, should we allow those to be considered in that sort of situation?
Right. So I feel like this might be something for the committee, only because I think they envisioned us meeting in terms of the limited reason of sort of addressing the definition of public assistance. But I feel like this might be a more global conversation about the adjustment factor itself and all of the I mean, if it's okay with you, Kathleen, I would rather bring this one before the committee, only because at the last committee meeting, there was discussion that we were only clarifying the guidelines that we've created, and we weren't really allowed to, I don't want to say not allowed to, but we're not really changing the guidelines until February of 2024. They determined that, yeah, so it's 4 years from date of implementation. So because this might be a more of a change, whether it's an expansion of the adjustment factors, or maybe we just keep it as public assistance, and then everyone can just read it in tandem with NRS 422A, which defines public assistance, which would then include, you know, a wide variety of benefits. But if it's okay with you, I think they wanted us to meet to just deal with that limited issue that I brought forward, because we weren't sure what your issue was in terms of putting this on the agenda. Is it okay if we bring it before the committee?
I am actually okay with that. I do think, though, that in terms of the definition, I mean, I'm not really looking to expand the adjustment factors. Okay. But in terms of when you look at public assistance, it includes TANF, it includes supplemental nutrition assistance, it includes the low income. So the question is, when we are looking at the definition of public assistance for the guidelines, do we want to limit it to TANF, or do we want to include these other items that are also considered public assistance pursuant to 422A-065?
So in 425.110, stipulations between the parties, subsection D says we have to contain a certification that he or she is not currently receiving public assistance and has not applied for public assistance. With that remaining in place, that public assistance with that broad definition pursuant to NRS 422A, all of the stipulations are getting rejected because none of our parties can certify they have never applied, nor are they currently on it, because at this point, so many individuals are on Medicaid and or food stamps. So this was discussed at the last meeting, and Kathy, I know you were on board with, when we envisioned that definition public assistance, we were only envisioning cash. So we just want to simply change that public assistance in subsection D to TANF assistance for needy families, and again, applied for TANF assistance for needy families. If that's okay, Kathy, is that correct?
That's the way I was looking at it, was to just define it as TANF. But Kathleen brings up some great ideas as well. Do we really want to limit it like that?
Well, if we don't limit it, our parties are unable to really ever enter stipulations. Okay. Because all of them they cannot certify they are not receiving public assistance, because every single, that's the pushback we're getting, is almost the vast majority that we're trying to stip with are on food stamps. So how do we stipulate with someone on food stamps when they cannot certify? The intent of this was that We didn't want parties stipulating to a support amount and detrimentally affecting the state because they're on cash assistance and stipping to an amount that does not meet the guidelines. But do we care if they stipulate to a certain amount and they're on food stamps?
No. Because we can't
Do we
collect
care if they're receiving EOB? I think it doesn't, you know, because this is a stipulation that falls outside of the guidelines in NAC 425.110. And so we just didn't want the state to be impacted on the repayment of welfare.
Correct.
If they were receiving cash. And so
I think the other part of it, I agree with you, Karen. I think the idea was we didn't want to have that impact, but I think the other part of it was to make certain that the basic needs of the child are being met. And I think that where I started looking at this is that if you have a stipulation between parties and you have an obligee who is receiving SNAP benefits or other benefits, and you have an obligor who's a higher earner, because they are still welfare benefits that are being paid from the state. And do we want to have the obligor excused from that obligation? And it's a conversation. I mean,
they have to meet subsection E still. Subsection E says whatever they come to, it still has to certify the basic needs of the child are being met.
Right. But they're being met by state aid.
Well, it depends, because it could be, it could be a home energy assistance. Because again, because it's so broadly defined under the NRS, it could be anything,
So they're not receiving, we could expand it, or we can leave it at TANF, but we could expand it to, TANF, SNAP. I don't like the idea of putting Medicaid in there because so many families need the assistance. And even if you have an obligor that's earning a higher income, they can't necessarily afford insurance. So just putting it out there. I mean, as I said, I am okay, and I have been using TANF as the basis for the stipulations.
We have two, but unfortunately, all of our OUCs, all of our stipulations are being rejected by the judges because our judges look at public assistance as defined in the NRS. And if the parties are receiving any one of these, our OUCs are being rejected, which from a program standpoint, now we don't have paternity being established. We don't have a child support obligation getting established. We have a judicial order that's rejected, an MROJ or OUC, whatever it is across the state, across the state. Now we've got to set it for hearing. So now we're bogging down the hearing, the judges, and now we're getting orders 3-4 months out because of this broad definition of public assistance.
So are you suggesting that we define for 425, 110, and 150 that public assistance be changed to just TANF?
Well, that would be what I would be inclined to do, just because subsection E still remains that we should be, no matter what, these are getting filed in the R case, which is, well, at least Clark uses R numbers. So no matter what, a deputy DA is reviewing these and signing off. And if it does not meet the basic needs of the child, and if the petitioner's on food stamps, we'll still consider all of those things in approving the stipulation.
Okay.
But
yeah, we review the stipulations as well, so I don't think that's an issue for us. I'm good with going with changing public assistance to temporary assistance for needy families in both NAC 425.110 and NAC 425.150D. That's D on sections.
Or, like I said, I'm open to just bringing that one before the committee, and we can talk about, do we want it to be broader as an adjustment factor? If our courts don't use food stamps as an adjustment factor, they don't consider.
Neither do ours.
Okay, they only look. quite frankly, even if a child is on public assistance, our courts do not reduce respondents' obligation, because it's either they pay what the state's paying every single month, or they pay their child support obligation, whichever one is lesser.
Well, I vote for clarity to the extent that we can be clear, and if we specifically state TANF, I think that can't get much clearer than that.
Okay, so I can recreate both and put them on the agenda as a proposal for the next date. So the way it would be rewritten, and I just want to make sure it's clear. NAC 425.110 subsection D would be rewritten to state, basically, contain a certification by the obligee that he or she is not currently receiving temporary assistance for needy families. Would you feel better about putting temporary assistance for needy families cash? Do you believe the public knows what temporary assistance for needy families is?
Probably the general public does not. So it's basically cash aid.
Okay, so are you okay with saying TANF cash? Kathy, would that be okay?
I think you should follow at least saying the TANF or temporary assistance for needy families,
cash,
maybe / cash assistance. Something to that effect, because TANF is the federal funds.
Yeah. Okay, so temporary assistance for needy families / cash assistance, and has not applied for temporary assistance for needy families / cash assistance. Does that work?
That works for me. Kim, do you have any other suggestion, or do you think that's okay from a policy perspective?
No, I like that it's written out. I know a lot of we'll get questions on it. If there's any gray in there, we will get questions on it from our non-assistance clients.
Okay, and then in NAC 425.150, subsection D would be rewritten to state any temporary assistance for needy families / cash assistance paid to support the child.
Yes.
Okay, so I will just, for us to put before the committee for our next meeting. Does that work?
I believe it works quite well.
Okay. Anything else? Do we have to take public comment?
Is it
comment or anything else?
in this, and with the subcommittee, is it acceptable for me to ask questions? This is Kim Smalley.
I
Or
don't
does
know.
it have?
I don't know.
Okay.
Kim, you would be a member of the public, correct? Because you're not on the committee.
I believe so.
So you'd have 2 minutes, correct? I don't know. Is it when we're open for public comment?
And that I don't know. I guess I can discuss it outside. Just don't want to break any rules. Thank you.
I don't know the rules. Maybe we have to find out for subcommittee.
Yeah, I don't know what the subcommittee rules are with that.
I would think the subcommittee rules would probably mirror the committee rules, that, only the members in the subcommittee would really be discussing the issues. Everything else would come through public comment.
Okay.
Well, how about we open it for public comment, and then Kim, you can ask questions, and I believe we can answer them. Are we ready, Joy? Is there anyone on the line if we begin public comment now?
There's no one else on the line, so if Kim wants to go ahead.
For the record, this is Kim Smalley with the State of Nevada Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. I just had a question on whether or not 425110 necessarily needed to mirror 150 for public assistance. If we included TANF under the certification requirements, but left public assistance in 150 as a broader definition for those adjustments, would that kind of meet it on both ends?
Thank you for the
That's-
comment.
Sorry, that's my only comment.
They do not need to mirror each other. I guess that would be something that Kathleen and I could discuss and or also bring up to the committee members. Thank you, Kim. So Kim, I will end public comment unless there's any other individuals on the line.
There's no one else on the line.
Okay. Kathleen, I will redraft both NAC 425150 and 425110 with the changes we discussed, okay. But I'm also open to bringing the committee members the idea that Kim presented, which is, would they prefer public assistance remain broad so the judges can consider all types of public assistance?
And I think that probably is a wise way to go, because the judges may want to weigh in on our recommendations.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you. It was nice to see you.
See you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.